Oh, it's time for winners and losers with the start of the fantasy playoffs in Week 15. It's a good time to be on the right side of Christian McCaffrey. He was unbelievable once again against the Arizona Cardinals, doing it on the ground, doing it through the air, making a case for maybe the NFL MVP, supporting his quarterback for sure, but certainly fantasy managers most likely advancing to the semifinals if Christian McCaffrey was on your side. Also good to be on the same side as Jared Goff. He was fantastic Saturday as the Lions picked apart the Denver Broncos. Great to see Sam Laporta on the other side of that as well, and just fun to be having great fantasy players at the right time. Helping you at the right time, myself, Jamey Eisenberg, Heath Cummings, giving you some winners and losers from our perspective from Week 15 and spin it forward a little bit as well with a look at the waiver wire for Week 16. But let's start with the winners, Heath. And it was good to see Matthew Stafford come through with a strong game. Now, while there were a lot of fluky quarterback performances this week, Aiden O'Connell had a big day along with Jared Goff, but Baker Mayfield surprised us. Matthew Stafford came through with a top 10 fantasy performance, so it was good to have the start of the week come through as we expected. Devin Singletary really put Dameon Pierce on the bench for the second half of the season. He definitely did it in Saturday's win over the Tennessee Titans. It was good to see Chris Godwin finally deliver with the targets and the production. He had targets 2 weeks ago, 11 targets in the Week 14 game, but to get double digits in targets once again as the Bucs, big win for them to stay alive in the NFC South. And then Trey McBride, I think, has put himself in position to be the #1 fantasy tight end in 2024. Now, that's not something I think a lot of us thought because Travis Kelce's still going strong. But with the way Trey McBride is connecting with Kyler Murray, it looks like Murray will be the starting quarterback once again in 2024. But it really doesn't matter. The system has benefited the tight ends all season long. And Trey McBride looks like he's going to be the first player at his position drafted next year. We got a lot of time to talk about that. But the way he's playing right now, helping fantasy managers in the fantasy playoffs, he's putting himself in position to be the best player at that spot.
I'm not sure James Cook can challenge for RB1 next year, but he may be getting close to moving into the first couple of rounds. Just another remarkable game from Cook, probably the best one so far. He has just been an absolute superstar RB1 since the coaching change in Buffalo. You can view him as a top 5 or 10 running back for the rest of this season, and I wouldn't be surprised if he's drafted that way next year. Rashee Rice moving in the same direction. You see this, caught all 9 of his targets for 91 yards. Looking like the #1 option for Patrick Mahomes as Travis Kelce continued to struggle in that game. Again, Rashee Rice, a no doubt about it starter for the remainder of the playoffs. Isaiah Likely doing just the same. You know, we're getting to the point now to where his good games without Mark Andrews far outweighing his bad games without Mark Andrews. Made a couple of very important and fantastic catches against Jacksonville on Sunday night. But the real big winner, Baker Mayfield, after the disaster that was the 2022 season, he has turned in a fantastic campaign, really turning things on lately. If it wasn't for Jared Goff, Mayfield would probably be the NFC Player of the Week. And now he gets to face Jacksonville in the fantasy semifinals. I didn't think we'd ever be saying this, but Baker Mayfield's going to be a top 8 quarterback in Week 16.
Yeah, looking really good for Baker, and we'll see what the Bucs decide to do with their quarterback situation in 2024. All right, there's the winners. Let's move on to the losers now. And a guy who was in the MVP race, probably not so much anymore, Dak Prescott, as the Cowboys absolutely were embarrassed by the Buffalo Bills. Not necessarily all Dak's fault, but he did not have an MVP-type performance, certainly for fantasy managers as well. We had a lot of high expectations for Antonio Gibson as Brian Robinson Jr. was out in a favorable matchup against the Rams. Not so much, as Gibson did not perform to the level that we hoped, and we'll see if Robinson does return in Week 15. For Puka Nacua, we'll talk about him in a second, but getting overshadowed by Cooper Kupp. And then Travis Kelce, my goodness, it's been frustrating down the stretch for him, and another bad game. They were trying. He had a couple of touchdown opportunities that just didn't come to pass, but we'll see if Kelce can bounce back in Week 16. Much more favorable matchup taking on the Las Vegas Raiders. But in terms of Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp is back, and that's probably a bad thing slightly for Puka. Matthew Stafford playing at a very high level, so there's still going to be opportunities for Nacua to have some big performances, and it's not like the targets have not been there for him. But with Kupp back as the lead guy in this offense, you have to trust him. You have to probably lean a little bit away from Puka, and we'll see how things go against the Saints on a short week. But still a startable wide receiver, but just not to the same level where I think we're done ranking Nacua ahead of Cooper Kupp for the time being.
I mean, it was bad enough that Sam Howell got benched on Sunday, but then to have Jacoby Brissett come in and look like an all-pro NFL quarterback made things even worse. I don't know when we're going to see Sam Howell play a full game again, but you certainly can't trust him if you somehow advanced after this stinker. Speaking of not being able to trust him, Deontay Foreman, we thought he'd established himself as the lead running back for the Bears. 6 carries, -6 yards, stuffed at the goal line over and over. Absolute disaster. He's probably droppable despite the fact it's a fantastic matchup against Arizona. Demario Douglas had 9 targets in each of his 2 games before his concussion, had 4 straight games with at least 7 targets, comes back after 2 weeks, just 3 catches for 33 yards. Doesn't look like there's the same connection there as there was with Mac Jones. But the big loser, Dalton Kincaid, I kind of expected that when Dawson Knox came back, it wouldn't really matter that much, and this may not be a result of that. After all, Buffalo did just run the ball over and over and over on Sunday, but it's now 2 games since Knox came back where Kincaid's role in the passing game has really shrunk. Everything's close to the line of scrimmage again. He's not a must-start tight end in the fantasy semifinals.
Yeah, very frustrating to see with the Bills offense. It's really just the James Cook show right now. So Kincaid getting left out, as was Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs. But, we'll see how they do against the Los Angeles Chargers in Week 16. All right, Heath, let's help some fantasy managers that are advancing. Show them a look at the early waiver wire options that they'll be hoping to pick up. And we have a lot of injuries at the running back position. We know that Zach Moss and Jonathan Taylor may miss Week 16 against Atlanta, so that puts Trey Sermon in line as maybe the best waiver wire addition. Now, things might change on Tuesday when we find out if Jonathan Taylor can play, but we know he's going to be, in terms of Sermon, a popular add if, in fact, he's the lead running back for the Colts this week. Justice Hill is going to be a little bit more of a priority as well, with Keaton Mitchell dealing with a season-ending knee injury. Clearly, Gus Edwards is going to get the high-level touches, but Justice Hill will get back into a prominent role for the Ravens and someone you look to add this week. We have the Raiders and the Chiefs backfield still in flux. Isaiah Pacheco is expected to return in Week 16, but if he does not, for whatever reason, you saw finally both running backs, Jarrett McKinnon and Clyde Edwards-Helaire, perform well against the Patriots. Again, good matchup against the Raiders. And Zamir White, coming off a strong game against the Chargers, would be in line for a lot of work in a tougher matchup against the Chiefs, but still someone you want to look to add. So keep an eye on those injuries at the running back position because these guys could be very popular this week. Heath, what about some of these wide receivers?
And I do think the running back position far outweighs the wide receiver on the waiver wire. There are 2 guys here that I would like to add regardless of the injury situation. I think Curtis Samuel has pretty firmly established himself as the number 2 wide receiver, no matter who the quarterback is. He is a number 3 for fantasy purposes, right around wide receiver 30. He's a must add. Josh Palmer, even if Keenan Allen comes back, I would expect Palmer to have a pretty decent role in that passing game. He has some deep ball ability that some of the other guys on the team do not. I think Tyler Boyd and Dontavian Wicks may be more injury reliant, but Wicks at 4% rostered is just way too low. If Christian Watson is out, then Wicks is a start as a number 3 wide receiver. But even when Watson has played, Wicks has been pretty consistently in that 5 target range. And because of what he does down the field, that can make him a starter. And then, yes, you see it correct. The number 1 quarterback ad looks like Joe Flacco. I did not expect that when he took over as the quarterback for the Browns, they'd let him throw the ball 40 to 45 times per game. That's exactly what they're doing, though.
And I didn't expect him to come back in that game on Sunday against the Bears, but sure enough, he had more passing yards in the 4th quarter than Justin Fields has in any game so far this season. It's just absolutely remarkable what Joe Flacco was able to accomplish in that comeback against Chicago. All right, we got a game tonight. We got some quarterback situations that we're monitoring between Seattle and Philadelphia. But let's show you some lineups that we like to play on FanDuel. And for me, I don't care who the quarterback is. I'm going with the Seattle passing game. I think we're going to see DK Metcalf come out and have a big performance to quiet some of the doubters that he's had a little bit of a bad season. We know he had the 3-touchdown game against Dallas, but coming off a little bit of a down game, even though he scored last week against San Francisco, I think he'll have a big performance against his bad Philadelphia secondary. And then A.J. Brown and Dallas Goedert, I think, should beat up this Seattle secondary, and Jackson Smith-Njigba, a nice sleeper this week. But this guy that I'm counting on for this week, and I could put him in the MVP spot as I change some things around as the day goes on, but DeAndre Swift. I think we're going to see Philadelphia come out and try and establish the run. We know Jalen Hurts dealing with the flu. He's expected to play, but I think DeAndre Swift has an opportunity here to play well. I just expecting a little bit more out of DK Metcalf. That's why he's in the MVP spot for me.
Well, it's a fantastic choice of DeAndre Swift. I'm facing him tonight, and I need him to score less than 10 fantasy points, so he is absolutely going off. Jalen Hurts is going to be my MVP. I love it when the guys have a little questionable tag by their name. Of course, if he doesn't play tonight, we'll have to blow this lineup up. I expect it to be Drew Lock, and I agree with you on the call with JSN. I think that Lock or Smith, whoever plays quarterback, will have success against the secondary. I'm expecting it to be Lock, but he and Geno are the same price, so just plug Geno in there if Drew Lock is out.
and Dallas Goedert should be looking wherever Jamal Adams is on the field. Line up over there, and you'll probably have some success. All right, that'll do it for us. Make sure you check out our Fantasy Football Today podcast. Wherever podcasts are found, we're helping you dominate your fantasy leagues. Check out the Fantasy Football Today Dynasty podcast as well, hosted by Heath Cummings, as he gets you set for everything you need for this offseason. But we have you set for everything you need in Week 16. Again, the Fantasy Football Today podcast, the best podcast in the business.